Hey everybody, it's Sneaky Narcotic, back at it again with another YouTube video. Before we get in the video, guys, please let me ask you guys to like, share, and subscribe. It would mean a whole lot to me, and I'd really appreciate it. So, let's get started. This is my top picks for Ravnica Allegiance enchantments. So the first one, Guardian Project. 3 generic, 1 green enchantment, and it is a rare. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it doesn't have the same name as another creature you control, or a creature card in your graveyard, draw a card. The flavor text reads, Simic Strength comes from its diversity. Very cool card, very Simic-esque with that flavor text, and even the whole look on the art looks sick. I love this card for not for standard as much as I do for commander. This is maybe a commander staple for green from now on, because green not as bad as white, but green has some issues drawing cards consistently. And one of the ways they do this, and I'll show you Beast Whisperer here from the more recent Ravnica set, Guilds of Ravnica. They do it by trying to have it when you cast a creature. Now, the thing is that a lot of times they will put it on a body like Beast Whisperer, where it will draw the card if you cast a creature. It will draw the card when the creature is cast. It will draw the card if the creature dies. That's the most recent ways I've seen them being able to draw a card in green. With Guardian, they put it on an enchantment and still have that cost a creature with, a little bit of flavor in there for the, it can't be the same, it doesn't have the same name as another creature you control or a creature card in your graveyard. So as far as standard, I don't really see, unless there's some really, really weird one-of deck, where every card, there's no duplicates in your deck. Singleton. Oh, that's the word I'm looking for. This would be cool in Singleton. This would be cool in Brawl. This would be cool in any Singleton-esque format like Commander and Brawl. I think it would even I would go as far as to call it a staple. The next card I want to talk about is Captive Audience. 5 generic, 1 black, 1 red, enchantment, mythic rare. Captive Audience enters the battlefield under the control of an opponent of your choice. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose one that hasn't been chosen. Your life total becomes 4. Discard your hand. Each opponent creates 5 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. So this is a countdown curse, in my opinion. You give it to an opponent, you enchant target opponent. That opponent picks something crappy to happen to them every single turn. So it reminds me, I played an Hour of Devastation. There was a couple of curses that was kind of cool. Well, you would enchant your opponent. You wouldn't really want to enchant yourself, but you would enchant your opponent and basically tell them, either get rid of this curse or you lose the game. So, with Splendor, enchanted players' creatures had a base power and toughness of 1/1. And then they couldn't use their Planeswalkers. Torment of Scarabs, at the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, that player loses 3 life unless he or she sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. So, yeah, anything to, instead of getting their board state, moving their board state forward, they're going back. I read a comment from the spoiler website that I got all these spoilers from, and one of the comments said, so you give your opponent 3 choices. Choice 1, lose the game. Choice 2, lose the game. Choice 3, go ahead and lose the game. So I don't really feel that way. I mean, Captive Audience is a very good card. I don't feel like it just necessarily says that you lose the game, but it definitely puts you at a huge disadvantage. Granted, it gives the opponent who is enchanted the choice of how they want to lose the game and what they want to take now. But you get 2 triggers off of this before they somehow are able to destroy it. Yeah, it will definitely it'll hurt. And the thing is, you can play more than one of these, so you enchant that. It's not legendary, so you can enchant your opponent again. And guess what? Each upkeep, they got to figure out what they want to do with their life. So, yeah, I quite enjoy this card. The next card I wanted to talk about, Mirror March. 5 generic, 1 red enchantment. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, flip a coin until you lose a flip. For each flip you win, create a token that's a copy of that creature. Those tokens gain haste. Exile them all at the beginning of the next end step. This is where this gets crazy. You get cards like Goblin Chain Whirler, where you could potentially wipe your opponent's side of the board. Definitely, with tokens, even if the tokens are at 2/2s. You get cards like Elvish Rejuvenator, where you would get multiple different instances of looking through your deck, filtering out lands, and then it doesn't really matter, about the 1/1s per se, but it would still be worth it just to filter out those lands. The number 1 mechanic I'd like to mention, and I mentioned this in my spoiler video, Demanding Dragon. So, Demanding Dragon comes down the turn after you put out Mirror March, and I mean, let's say that you somehow won the coin flip 4 times. It only takes 20 damage most of the time to kill your opponent, if they have all their life total still. So Demanding Dragon by itself could kill your opponent, without swinging. Because then it gets haste, not the actual creature, but the tokens from it get haste. And then they swing for 5. So I really like this card. I feel like it has the potential to be broken. And when I first saw this card, I was like, what? Are you kidding me? This is crazy card. Here's another good card, Rhythm the Wild. 1 generic, 1 red, 1 green, enchantment, uncommon. Creature spells you control can't be countered. Non-token creatures you control have Riot. I think I talked to one of my commenters down in the section below, and we talked about it. He thinks that this card, Rhythm the Wild, having 2 copies out would give 2 instances of Riot to your creatures. I think that it's more of a static ability, so it would be 1 instance of Riot. But anyways, the flavor text reads, some view Domri's unlikely accent as a sign of Ilharg the Raised Boar's imminent return. So, here's what this card reminds me of a little bit. Leyline of Life Force, 2 generic, 2 green. Creature spells can't be countered. Yeah. The other side of Rhythm the Wild is Fervor. Giving creatures you control have haste. Yeah. That's definitely in there if you want it. So both of these cards, that the Rhythm the Wild is basically both of these cards combined, both the cards were rare. So it's weird to see that this is an uncommon slot, and as you can see, it has the power of a rare. So I really like it. I probably will be playing it. I I'm wrong. I hope that it gives you multiple instances of right. But again, guys, I am not a judge. I'm a player. And as such, I will play the game however a judge proceeds to have it. Here is the piece of a de resistance. Simic Ascendancy. One of my favorite cards from the drop. Let's just skip to the part that I like the best. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Simic Ascendancy has 20 or more growth counters on it, you win the game. Love alternate win cons. Magic the Gathering, for all of you that don't know this, the only real way to win it is that your opponent's life total reaches 0 before yours does. Otherwise, a card specifies if you can win the game. I love Simic Ascendancy because it specifies that you win the game. You win the game by putting +1/+1 counters on creatures you control, and you put that many +1/+1 counters on, growth counters on Simic Ascendancy per +1/+1 counter that you put on the creatures you control. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Simic Ascendancy has 20 or more growth counters on it, you win the game. Love alternate win conditions. This is a two mana drop win condition. I think this will see some play. I would not be surprised to see it in Commander of some sort. I just wanted to mention the other cards that were alternate win conditions that I've seen. Approach of the Second Sun, ruined Kaladesh standard, Amonkhet standard, ruined Hour of Devastation standard. I hated Approach of the Second Sun with a passion. Biovisionary, another Simic card, I meant to say, that gives you another win condition. Would even be, if they would have reprinted Biovisionary, it would have been very easy to win with how the standard is now, having 12 copies of Quasi-Duplicate, not that hard to get Biovisionary off. I did want to mention with the Second Sun, you see how expensive the Second Sun is? It was at least difficult enough to get off that you had to wait. But for now, Simic Ascendancy is basically saying, put this down early and you probably will win. Or you keep it alive, you'll win. Which should not be hard to do. The next card I wanted to talk about is Cinder Vines. A red and a green. Enchantment rare. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, Cinder Vines deals 1 damage to that player. 1 generic, sacrifice Cinder Vines, destroy target or artifact or enchantment. Cinder Vines deals 2 damage to that permanent's controller. So, the reason I like this card is because it kills a control matchup. Every single time they want to counter a spell of yours, or every single time that they want to wipe your board, kill a creature you have, they're taking the damage. Their card might as well say, hey, what you want to do is take a damage and do this. As an added cost to playing this card, to playing this instance or sorcery, take a damage. And it just adds up over time. 20 instances of this, they're dead in Standard. Even in Commander, I see this a lot because any card that can deal damage to more than just one opponent, or any enchantment, let me put it that way, any enchantment that can deal damage to more than one opponent, and continue to deal damage per every turn, is just a good card in my opinion in in Commander. So I see that a lot. It reminds me a bit of Immolation Shaman, also saying, whenever an opponent activates an ability of an artifact, creature, or land, there is an amount of ability, Immolation deals 1 damage. It seems like Roll has a little bit of this, if you want to play some Magic, let's deal some damage to you type of deal, Niv Mizzet Piran is also another card that reminded me of, with that whole, whenever you draw a card, Niv Mizzet Piran deals 1 damage. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card. So basically, Cinder Vines is a Niv Mizzet Piran, better version of Niv Mizzet Piran, but just doesn't have the draw. Because instead of just saying instants and sorceries, it also counts for artifacts. It also counts for enchantments. Trying to think if is there any other slot that I'm missing. Instant sorceries, enchantments, artifacts. No, that's pretty much it. So yeah, one would fight that it's a better version of Niv Mizzet Piran. The next card I wanted to talk about, Wilderness Reclamation. I kind of screwed up on the animations there, so we'll just go ahead and show you all the cards I want to talk about in this. Wilderness Reclamation, 3 generic, 1 green, enchantment, uncommon. At the beginning of your end step, untap all lands you control. The flavor text says, walls crack, buildings fall, always the wild returns. Domri Raid. Still some more Domri flavor text, love it. This, I kept on thinking of this imaginary card, and I guess it wasn't too imaginary, because here it is. Awakening is what this Wilderness Reclamation reminded me of. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, untap all creatures and lands. So it's similar to Awakening, where it does untap all your lands. In Standard, it's basically the same as untapping at each player's upkeep. Because you're still going to be untapping at your end step, which is before the other player's upkeep, and you'll still be untapping at your untap step. So it would basically be the same thing as half of Awakening. Sure, you don't get to untap all your creatures, but the way that I see playing this, you wouldn't have a lot of creatures to untap to begin with. The way I see playing this is some weird Simic control. I really think Bant control, blue, green, white. But even then, you could put this in a Simic control where you're countering spells, and Wilderness Reclamation. The turn that it comes out, you at your end step will have your lands untapped. You'll have control magic up. That's what I'm thinking Wilderness Reclamation is all about. Is that you put it out, you have mana to counter spells that your opponent wants to play, then it comes back to your turn. You play draw spells on your turn, then at your end step, untap, have counter magic up for their turn, and it just is a constant cycle of, oh god, really? They're going to keep advancing by drawing all these cards. And of course, the way I was saying about the new way control can be is that you have cards like Frilled Mystic that is still a counterspell, but also a creature and deals damage. And 3 damage will take out an opponent over time, okay? Especially when you keep on countering everything they want to play. So, yeah, I like Wilderness Reclamation. I think it's going to be a refreshing card for control builds of any sort that can hold green mana. So, yes. Dovans Acuity. 1 generic, 1 white, 1 blue. Enchantment, uncommon. When Dovans Acuity enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life and draw a card. I feel like I've talked about this card because I have. In my spoiler video for it. I love this card. Then, whenever you cast an instant spell during your main phase, you may return Dovans Acuity to its owner's hand. Dovin ticked the Planeswalkers off on his fingers himself. Domri, Kaya, Rao, Vraska, and Bolas made an even 6. Yes, I love the flavor text, the art, everything about this card. I'm just going to say the same exact thing. Revitalize in Disinformation Campaign. So Revitalize on Dovans Acuity, that's basically what it is. It is it's just a reoccurring Revitalize. Yes, you lose 1 life from you have 1 more life in Revitalize than you do in Dovans Acuity. Dovans Acuity costs more, but it can recur. That's the most important thing. If Revitalize is vital and is seeing play in the current meta, then Dovans Acuity will see play. And it reminds me a lot of Disinformation Campaign, and in fact could go in some sort of Esper control with the Disinformation Campaign, because Disinformation Campaign, it comes back when you surveil, while Dovans Acuity comes back when you play sorcery or instant on your main phase. Oh no, whenever you cast an instant spell during your main phase. There's a couple different instances that surveil, so that works out just fine. And I just like it that it's even better than Disinformation Campaign, because Disinformation Campaign says draw a card, target opponent, and each opponent discards a card. Dovans Acuity says draw a card and gain 2 life. Well, after a while with Disinformation Campaign, your opponent's just a top deck hero. They don't have any cards in their hand. With Dovans Acuity, it says, well, you're just always going to be gaining life. So there's no downside. After a while, Disinformation Campaign just becomes a 3 mana draw a card. So the next card I wanted to talk about is Eyes Everywhere. 2 generic, 1 blue, enchantment, uncommon. At the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1. It has an effect of an activated ability of pay 5 generic, 1 blue, exchange control of Eyes Everywhere, and target non-land permanent. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. And the flavor text says that they've got eyes inside my head. So Eyes Everywhere. Firstly, love the art. Love the flavor text. It's very Demir-esque with mind control and always watching, and just looks very sick, dude. I love it. I like that it gives you the ability to constantly scry. You put out a treasure map, and I'm not talking about treasure map in the cards upcoming, but if you put out a treasure map, you're constantly tapping mana just to scry 1. Of course, it flips into Treasure Cove, and you get that draw and an extra land, whatever. But a lot of people do use treasure map just for the scrying, and Eyes Everywhere is treasure map after you pay the upfront fee. And then it becomes a mind control card. So I wanted to bring up that you could play this with Mass Manipulation and in Bolus's Clutches, because they're both going to be in standard, and play some sort of jank, mind control your opponent. Steal all his good creatures off of him. Get a big Mass Manipulation. That'd be nice. And then, this Eyes Everywhere is almost in Bolus's Clutches. It's in Bolus's Clutches with a downside of giving your opponent the ability to scry 1 his upkeep every turn. Because it's still 6 mana exchange, and 6 mana, and you can take control of non-land permanent they control. Yeah, buddy. So that's basically what I wanted to say about this, is that it's going to be a better version of In Bolus's Clutches, and I really do think I'll play it. Next card I wanted to talk about, Verity Circle. 2 generic, 1 blue. Whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes tapped, if it isn't being declared as an attacker, you may draw a card. And of course it gives the ability to tap target creature without flying. And then it says here there is only truth. Barvissa Azorius Emissary. 4 generic, 1 blue to tap that target creature without flying. Out of the way in case you're blind. I'm still a skeptic about this card. I wanted it in my top because a lot of people were excited to see it. A lot of people I watched were excited to see it. I am still a skeptic. I feel like it's just one of those niche cards where tapping creatures used to be very popular. There was a lot of cards that did it back in Amonkhet Kaladesh Standard, but nowadays you just don't see it. You see tempo instead, where they tempo it back to their hand, or bounce effect it back to their hand instead of tapping it. Here's one for you. It's kind of like having a crippling chill. Whenever you, it's a crippling chill in enchantment form, basically. Other than that part that it says it doesn't untap during its controller's action untap step. But yes, that's what it feels like. And then we won't mention that other part. I misread the card. If you must know, I misread the card where it says if it isn't being declared as an attacker. And I was thinking about Eyes, Ever Watching Threshold, and see, that's what would have made it a really good card. Is that if it said, if it just said whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes tapped, that would be nice. But it has to give it that little caveat of if it isn't being declared as an attacker, you may draw a card. It could have just been an Ever Watching Threshold. That would have been nice. In fact, I would much rather an Ever Watching Threshold than whenever a creature gets tapped. Would much rather that, but whatever. It doesn't really matter. Thank you guys for watching this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. I have one more set to go through, which is artifacts. There's not a lot of artifacts that came out in this set, so I will just be mentioning the different artifacts instead of having a top choice, and talking a little bit about what we can do with them. I might put some lands in there. Of course, you know, there's going to be the burn lands. But anyways, guys, please like, share, and subscribe. This is Sneaky Narcotic, signing off.